Hi there guys, welcome back to I Can't Witch Without, the series where we look at different bits and pieces from my regular witchy practice. From week to week we change it up, sometimes it'll be crystals, sometimes it'll be herbs. This week it is a flower. We are looking at Wisteria. So just to precursor the video, the disclaimer as always, you do not need any particular item in order to be a witch. That's not what the series is about. I Can't Witch Without is looking at different bits and pieces that I enjoy, that I use regularly, and sometimes that I am excited to try out. So as always, we start from 2 points of reference: the Encyclopedia of Magical Herbs by Cunningham and the Herbal Compendium by Paul Barrell. We look at the two sources in order to give us a jumping off point, and then we talk about other research, my feelings, my assertions on the item in question. So believe it or not, Wisteria is not in Scott Cunningham's encyclopedia. This is where it should be, between there, it's not in there. And the Herbal Compendium it is in, but barely. Wisteria, Neptune Aquarius, Herb of Magic. Wisteria is a herb for those who devote time to reading and studying. Wearing the oil is believed to help one be a better student by promoting mental clarity and helping memory retention. Which is interesting given I've just done a video about soul imprinting with scent. The flowers make a wonderful tea when preparing an exam. So obviously this was a little bit disappointing in terms of information that the books provided. So I went ahead and looked at some different sources. So Magic of Flowers by Tessa Whitehurst records Wisteria as being beauty that increases with age, divine blessings, comfort, love, healing, particularly healing grief, softness, soothing, stress relief, and wisdom. Wisteria is also noted to raise vibration, promoting psychic opening, overcoming obstacles, and drawing prosperity. Wisteria meaning and symbolism from whatsyoursign.com, which has a much better array of information. Shows us some actual information about Wisteria rather than the absolute shocking lack of it in the other books. Flora records indicate Wisteria has been known to live up to 100 years and even older. There is a 1,200-year-old Wisteria in Japan at Fujino Ushijima. Its long life bestows the symbolic meaning of immortality and longevity. European families mark the ages of generations passing with the growth of this vine, and so it makes sense the vine embodies a sense of immortality. Symbolically, it has come to mean love, grace, bliss, honour, memory, patience, endurance, longevity, exploration, creative expansion, releasing of burdens, the duality of love, I'm double reading sentences. The victory over hardship. Okay. Here the Wisteria meaning and symbolism speaks of love lost, but also the ability for the heart to endure in spite of rejection. In other words, the weeping Wisteria expresses sorrow, but is an incredibly durable vine, able to live, even flourish, throughout mistreatment and harsh conditions. We see more duality in love symbolism from the Victorian era, in which the language of flowers was quite intricate. The symbolism of Wisteria in this age dealt a warning of clinging to love and understanding that love is the fruit, but our obsession with it can be choking as the vine. Wisteria blossoms, eloquently falling in tapered clusters, are considered a visual indication of bowing or kneeling down in honour and respect in Feng Shui. Practitioners of Feng Shui are encouraged to plant Wisteria in quadrants requiring sombre moments of contemplation to instill quiet honour. Shin Buddhism also views the Wisteria meaning as a symbol of prayer, or thoughtful reverence. The branches and blossoms seem to lower their head in gentle supplication. The vine gesture naturally brings to mind our need for peace, quiet, and time to honour the divine essence within our own understanding. In the Japanese kabuki theatre, we see Wisteria in its glory as told in the tale of the Wisteria Maiden. This eloquent expression of appreciation for the wisteria is both graceful and tender, just like the maiden's namesake. The Japanese symbolism for wisdom is love, sensuality. The Japanese symbolism for wisteria is love, sensuality, support, sensitivity, bliss, and tenderness. As a symbol of love, we see the wisteria in the 1820s Japanese kabuki drama, Fujimusami. The Wisteria Maiden is depicted in a painting holding a wisteria branch, until one day she becomes smitten with the young man and steps out of the painting in an effort to capture his attention. Unfortunately, her efforts are futile. Her love goes unrequited, and she sorrowfully steps back into the two-dimensional world of her lonely painting, still holding her weeping wisteria. The wisteria is a vivacious grower with the ability to spread over acres, spiralling out into a impressive expanse. Symbolically, we might see this as an external reflection of expanding our own consciousness. Keeping in mind, however, that the wisteria can be destructive in her growth and requires discipline to avoid spiralling out of control, for indeed the vine has been known to take down entire buildings. Wisteria therefore reminds us that the journey into our conscious evolution is vital to our own blossoming. However, left unchecked or practiced without foundational discipline, unsavoury results may occur. Okay, so it's interesting to me, first and foremost, that a great deal of the lore from the wisteria is based in a Eastern culture and history, and therefore is that why it's missing a little bit from the two booklets? I don't know. Of course, it speaks volumes to me because I adore the Japanese culture, history, visual art, image. People should know by now I'm a little bit obsessive about geisha, and blossoms of that type can sort of bring up images of the hair decorations, although they tend to favour cherry blossoms, but there you go. So, it's interesting to me that the wisteria, very much like the willow, gets associated up with this sort of forlorn imagery, this sort of sadness of the heart, this heartbreak of personal rejection and wilting into oneself. It becomes, in that sense, very much associated with a feminine form of love, even though that's not actually expressed within the compendiums or anything like that. But within the Japanese kabuki theatre, it's the Wisteria Maiden and her evocative dance of emotional rejection. But there's also this interesting duality between a depth of emotion, the risk of putting oneself forward into the realm of love, and one's ability to heal oneself even when one is rejected. For me, wisteria does have the element of whimsy about it, of fairy tale, and I think that weaved into the imagery that we've just talked about wisteria is some key themes about fairy tales which are often overlooked. There is, of course, this very much fey image of this beautiful flower. The flowers spiral and around, and the beautiful blossoms sort of cascading from the heavens, if you like, creating curtains, and we step through them into the world of the fae, into the world of whimsy and story. However, the intricacies of fairy tales and wisteria are in the detail. The vine part of wisteria reminds me very much of ivy imagery, and they are not two plants which are often sort of correlated together, compared or contrasted. However, when you stop to think about it, the image of ivy growing up around towers of maidens is something very fairy tale-esque. But there is this strong root to survive and overcome difficulties and to hold on when all things are difficult. And fairy tales in their rawest forms are usually moral tellings, warnings, sort of fables handled down over time from parent to child, and we've sanitised them a lot more in modern society, and they've lost a great deal of their meaning. For once the realm of the Fae was deeply respected and deeply feared, that well known that Fae were not all fairy godmothers that granted wishes. There was a good deal of sinister and kidnap and mind games. I was trying to think of the polite way of putting mind games going on with a Fae. There's trickery, there's deceit, there is all sorts within the realm of the Fae that was not so savoury. And Wisteria sort of holds to that pattern. There is an absolute need to increase one's awareness, become aware of the world around us, and to hold on and grow. And the spiral image to me is intimately connected with the labyrinth and the spiral of creation, as above, so below, as within, so without. And that, to me, that spiraling, that vine image is very much about personal growth and on a spiritual context, as has already been noted. But if it's allowed to get out of hand, destruction ensues. And that brings up to me parallels of the Fae and the other worlds. If we become too obsessed with something other, if we're not deeply grounded and rooted within this world, then we become lost and we can destroy ourselves and give way to our own destruction. That also sort of draws parallels with our emotional states, which this flower clearly pertains to, that if we allow our emotions to run unchecked and our hearts to cave in and destroy, then sorrow of the heart is a life killer. As sad as it's making me feel to say it. It makes me feel quite mournful. And then we have the blossoms. So the blossoms do sort of this sort of sweep. And I always think of willow this way, and I always think of wisteria this way, of it being very much like a dance. And it does remind me of the Japanese style of dance, with the very particular hand movements, the ways that they use material and fabric, particularly sleeves in Japanese dance, to show emotion, to show and be indicative of one's feelings, and sort of the slower, heavy emotions being indicative of mournful behaviour, and then sort of more exuberant hand motions being more jubilant. And there is something very much about the eternal dance in flowers such as wisteria. There is beauty in all of the dance, but there's also this requirement of overcoming, of strength. There's also this need for an element of humility. This idea that to a lot of Buddhists and people who follow up feng shui, the wisteria sort of shows the need for prayer, for contemplation. And that ties into its energy of immortality as well, because it is so long living. All things are considered within the passage of time. The idea that one seeks out wisdom over many years and one gains wisdom as one grows older is sort of, it's entrenched in all culture. I think that's pretty much a cross-cultural idea, that even though the beauty will fade, the wisdom will remain. I'm a little bit hesitant whenever I hear immediate associations with any particular plant or flower as that being only sorrowful. I mean, we talk here about Wisteria having that balance between love and the mourning of love, the sadness, the passing, the wanting of love, the desire, and then rejection. And it bothered me a little bit when I was first reading it about how it sort of solely seemed to focus on the idea that Wisteria was simply a plant of mourning love. And it is associated with death in a sense, because, you know, the European families marking the ages of generation past with the growth of the vine. Generations of family that have passed on. And when we talk about the Fae, of course, it's very much intricately tied to a sense of the otherworld, because the Celtic otherworld sort of gets watered down into Fae imagery. So perhaps this has a death element to it. And because I don't particularly see death as the end, and I don't think death is the most sorrowful thing, and I work with crone energies a lot and see the beauty in them, I tend to feel a little bit irked whenever this energy gets portrayed as being very much, oh well, it's about mourning and sorrowful, and I'm like, well, it's necessary, and it's not the end of all things, it's just the end of one journey into another. It's one door closing and another door opening. Facilitating rebirth is necessary. And there's beauty within it, and there's beauty within cronedom. And I think that's where I get a little bit riled about these comments where it's like, oh, it's all about sadness and grief, and well, that's sort of really not digging into what Wisteria really speaks to me of. It has this incredible beauty, and it's very fragile in one hand and yet very enduring in the other. In terms of blossom, Wisteria doesn't blossom for very long, at least not here. There are about 2 weeks of the year where I harvest all the Wisteria I can, and I wish I could harvest some more around the village, but I don't dare. Crazy lady with a shovel. And then it's gone for the rest of the year, and it's very much about life in that element, that it's this blooming in one great triumphant glorious moment, and then the petals fall, but the beauty still remains within the vine, which is incredibly beautiful when you sit and look at it, and is very much about the mysteries, about passing through one's perceptions of what something is and learning to take a closer look, and to learn to value not only the prettiness of the petals but the strength of the vine. And I think it has a really good message for all of us when examining our emotional states. That it's not just the pretty emotions that make us who we are, it's the endurance, the overcoming of difficulty, the ability to outlive the past hurts. And I think that's a good place to actually stop. I think that kind of conveys the message that I really did want to get across with Wisteria. So that is it for this video. Many blessings.